telling me, what the fuck?
Factors that lead back to geoengineering. So many roads lead back to geoengineering. Statewide king salmon decline points to outside forces, yet again, that I've just named. When you have no basis to the food supply, when you have an ozone layer that has been torn apart by these programs, excessive UV killing the plankton, food chain collapses. Right now, global pelagic fish populations are down 95%. It's not going to be long before there's nothing caught out of the sea. That's hard fact. Species extinction rate. If you can see the graph there, it goes almost straight up. I've been over this figure before, but it's important to repeat. We're losing about 200 species a day. 200 a day going extinct. You hear a lot of people say that, well, that's normal. Species go extinct. That's 10,000 times normal. It's 10,000 times the background rate. Nothing normal about that. This is something that most of you probably haven't seen. It looks like a golf course. It's actually algae. This is the ocean. And you see people up on the beach behaving as if nothing's wrong. This is in China. Massive algae blooms are literally matting the ocean several feet thick. Those oceans are dead. They're dead in those regions. You don't get this sort of growth otherwise. Our media doesn't cover these sorts of things. It is literally ecosystem collapse. These dots are all dead zones. There's over 400 dead zones around the planet right now. Some as big as 10,000 square miles. These are anoxic zones where there's no oxygen in the water. Everything dies. These zones are expanding. Again, media is not covering this. Massive fish die-off around the globe. This is just one scene of too many to even begin to show. And this is the sort of thing that all of us should be focused on. We will focus on it when there's nothing left to eat, but if we can be ahead of that before we reach the point that there's nothing left, maybe we'll have something to salvage. Acid test, rising CO2 levels kills ocean life. We have the oceans absorbing CO2. There's no question about this. They're acidifying rapidly. Crustaceans can't form shells as well. And you have an acidification that could kill all ocean life. Again, no life in the ocean, no terrestrial life. This is a very important graph. Change in Earth's total heat content. I want to stress, none of this is about Al Gore or carbon credits. I say that every time. I have great disdain for Mr. Gore. He's part of the problem. But that being said, make no mistake about it, the planet is warming. And any of these geoengineered events that we see that convince people otherwise are simply horribly spun events. And this is what it's important to remember about that. The blue graph you see is ocean heat content compared to atmospheric heat. A cubic meter of seawater holds 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. So it doesn't matter what they do geoengineering-wise. They can cool off temperatures at the surface. It means nothing compared to what's happening in the oceans. The oceans are warming extremely rapidly. Can't hide that for very long. And geoengineering appears to have played a big part in that warming, but not the only part. I want to stress this as well. Human activity is a form of geoengineering. When you put 4 billion gallons of hydrocarbon in the atmosphere a day, that's a form of geoengineering. People need to consider that. We would be exponentially better off without these climate engineering programs. The planet would have been able to respond. But bottom line is ocean heat building up extremely rapidly. This is ocean heat content as well. You see the graph goes straight up. This is trends in global average absolute sea level rise. Are sea levels rising? Yes, they are absolutely rising. Anybody who says otherwise, tell them to prove it to you. If anybody says that the ice caps are gaining and sea levels dropping, tell them to prove it, because they can't. Sea level rise unstoppable, say scientists. This is what the hard frontline data says without any question at all. In fact, how much can sea levels rise? We have about 21 to 24 feet of sea level rise built into Greenland. We have about 197 feet built into Antarctica, about another 15 feet built into the rest of the world's glaciers. Right now, even conservatively from some of the frontline scientists, we're guaranteed 100 feet of sea level rise in the coming decades. Now, you'll find plenty of data to dispute that, but it's the same people that dispute how much oil was leaking from the Gulf, how much radiation we're being exposed to here. You must discern through this data, because there is so much false data out there, people don't know what to think. Annual minimum Arctic sea ice. A lot of headlines last fall that the sea ice was expanding. Wait the next 2 years, see what you see, because that was absolutely spun as well. It was the surface area that they measured, not the density, not the volume. The volume is still shrinking rapidly. It's 1/5 what it was 30 years ago. Geoengineering is keeping a thin layer with artificial ice nucleation and blocking of the sun 24/7. They're trying to keep that ice cap there to keep the methane in the sea floor. It's not working. It's making everything worse. That's what we're trying to expose. Geoengineering is destroying the ozone layer. This is part of, again, geoengineering being the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth. They try to address one thing and cause 100 more, but are exponentially worse. So now, if you drive around Reading and look at the trees in Walmart, Costco, take a good look, because the bark is gone off the southwest side. It takes a lot of radiation to burn the bark right off the tree. We're being exposed to massive amounts of UVB and even UVC radiation now. UVC is the last stage before X-ray. We know this. We're metering it on the ground in California, Maine, Florida, and New Mexico. This is a penetration of UVB into the ocean. I talked about plankton dying, correct? Geoengineering, on the shredding of the ozone layer, we've been told it was hairspray cans. Now, I ask you, what's more logical? Is it hairspray cans or military tankers dumping 100 tons at a shot up there, flying 24/7? They've been at this since at least the late 40s. We've been given a lot of red herrings as reasons for things that are happening. CFCs are bad for the atmosphere, but the geoengineering appears to be the largest causal factor, so the UV penetrates deeper into the ocean, kills the plankton stocks die, oxygen content goes down, fish stocks die. You can see how everything is connected. Everything's linked together. This is deviation from normal temperature map. This is over this is between 2008 and 2012, and the orange-red colors show increases from the 30-year average over that time. You see a couple of blue spots in Antarctica, but that's about it. So this is the true overall global picture. You see some blues off the coast of North America. If you look at that, that's where they blanket spray 24/7, shuts off our moisture. This isn't the first-year drought. We're in our 6-year drought. So from 2008 to 2012, they blanket sprayed the Pacific, we think in an effort to stop El Nino, to stop the El Nino event from happening, because that would have made global warming even worse. But what does that do to the rest of the planet when you shut off one of its natural mechanisms? So that blanket spraying all over the Pacific, it cooled the surface temperatures off there. But at what cost? At what cost? If it's killing everything inland, was that really a gainer? I don't think so. And this is a current map right now. This is through, excuse me. No, I'm sorry. This is an older map, but it shows a sequence. I'll show a newer one here. When you see a map that's that imbalanced, it should be a red flag. That can't be created naturally, where you have half the country frying and another half below normal temperatures. So the darker colors are various stages above normal, the middle being maybe 20 degrees above normal. You throw a rock and you're in below normal temperatures. This is a recent GIS map. Now, this is important to look at this map. As you see the blue colors over Canada and the eastern U.S., that's where heavy geoengineering is occurring. Geoengineering can and does cool massive regions temporarily at the cost of making the overall warming worse. So you have jet stream manipulation that pushes Arctic air down. You see even the Arctic is much warmer than Canada and the eastern U.S. So they can cool regions, make a lot of headlines. What's the real picture? That's the real picture. Global temperature records. Again, no downward trend there. Another GIS map, ocean temperatures, everything far above normal overall. If you look through the headlines and you start looking at global news, you'll find out it's a very different picture than our media is painting. And this is important to remember. Did the media originally paint the picture of global warming? Yes. Did they have an agenda for that? To saddle us with taxes and all sorts of burdens? Yes, they did. But now I think things have gone so far, they have definitely changed directions. They've doubled down on geoengineering, and now they're trying just desperately to hide the fact that a runaway greenhouse event may be occurring right now. Because if you look at the media right now, they are definitely not pushing a warming agenda overall. Weather Channel, it's like their goal, their marching orders is to make it seem as cold as possible. And so there has been a directional change with what the media is doing. They changed their plans as well. Another GIS map, overall warming. This is ozone depletion, 84 to 97. The globe on your right shows massive depletion during that time. There's a massive northern hemisphere ozone hole, not speculation. Canadian scientists have been threatened with termination from their jobs if they talk about this. They're trying to hide it.
Just go to the
And people
device today
feel the sun on their face
o'clock.
and they think maybe they're just getting older. No, the UV is exponentially higher than we're being told. UV rays, this is an important graph as well. We're told by all major metering agencies that 95% of incoming UV is UVA. This is the first presentation I've done where we've had actual solid metering behind us. That means 5% is UVB. That's the more harmful band. We now know that at least 60% of incoming UV is UVB. 60. That's a 1,200% increase in UVB. As I said, we're actually getting UVC, the last stage before X-ray. We are told by all major agencies UVC stops 100,000 feet up in the atmosphere. Not anymore. These are trees from Costco. They all look like this. Bark's gone. Trees look horrible. Nobody seems to notice, but they'll notice soon enough when there's no trees left. Dead branches sticking out everywhere. This is a typical stress response when trees have too much radiation. They start dropping branches. They start dropping foliage. We're seeing it all over the forest. Drought is only one issue. The excessive UV is absolutely another. More trees from Costco, burnt bark. This is the road we're on. And a lot more of our roads look like this now. When I moved up here 10 years ago, you couldn't find many. The forest was green and lush. Not so anymore. I live in a forest. I've grown up in a forest. I spent my life in forests. It's deathly silent there now. This is a map that's still applicable, even though this is an older map. You see the western U.S. is in protracted drought, while the eastern U.S. is now getting excessive moisture. As they try to create artificial cloud cover, it tends to migrate the moisture. So the moisture that comes over us is aerosolized. The storms come late, if they come at all, almost no moisture, and they migrate that moisture further east, where it comes down sometimes in a deluge. So you get half the country in drought, the other half with excessive rain. How climate change makes wildfires worse. This is the sort of article that completely ignores the elephant in the room. Again, what about geoengineering? And on the fires in 2008, we know that during that week, you guys all remember the fires in 2008 probably. We know that NASA's mobile DC-8 lab was doing monitoring testing during that week. What kind of testing is that? That lights a country ablaze, it impacts countless lives. Is this just a game for them? Is it a game to treat the atmosphere like a physics lab? That was a test of some sort in 2008. So where are the climate scientists, and how can they be so completely oblivious to a raging elephant in the room? And this is where articles like this don't acknowledge that. Unprecedented storm sparks California fires. This is referring back to 2008, as I just went over. Solar flare could unleash nuclear holocaust across planet Earth, forcing hundreds of nuclear power plants into total meltdowns. This is also very important. This is relating back to the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth. The more they spray, the more they have to spray. As they destroy the ozone layer, they destroy the Earth's natural protection. Now, if we have a large CME, a large solar flare, we may have Fukushima times 100 or 200, because solar flares can knock out grid power, no grid power. Nuke plants can't cool themselves, they go into meltdown. So the more they spray, the more they, I think, feel they have to spray to provide protection. Where we once had natural protection, now we have to have toxic metal artificial protection. So this is one more way that geoengineering could end life on Earth, by causing more meltdowns. Weather control and HAARP conspiracy.
So why do you
no
think
conspiracy,
I should work
HAARP
for the
exists, we know
National
what it
Security
does.
Agency?
For those that aren't familiar,
Well, you'd be
extremely
working on the
powerful
cutting edge.
ground-based radio frequency
You would
transmitters. They
expose
don't
some kind
receive,
of
they transmit.
technology that you wouldn't see anywhere else.
You have a
because
huge
we
facility in
classify
Alaska. You have about 24 big facilities, ground-based around the globe.
theory, chaos
These
math,
facilities can and do
advanced
routinely
algorithms.
manipulate the jet stream. And the jet stream configurations
Well,
we
that's
see
one
of late
aspect of
to
what we
create these
do.
artificial storms appear to be direct results. We have HARP monitoring stations that show where those frequencies occur. It's the 2 + 2 = 4 equation, period. I don't know how many have seen this. This is called SBX radar. This amounts to a sea-based X-band radar, which is a sea-based HARP facility. It doesn't even look real. It looks like something out of a science fiction movie. And this is what happens when you have unlimited funds and nothing else to do but to experiment on planet Earth. So now you have these facilities around the globe as well. This is how HARP is affecting the global meltdown, HARP and geoengineering. These are ocean currents. We now have warm Atlantic water being pumped into the Arctic. That's thawing methane on the seafloor. Methane's releasing. Methane goes into the atmosphere, covers the planet like a layer of glass, begins to heat things up fast. Methane, over a 10-year time horizon, is 100 times more powerful than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Again, all roads, so many roads leading back to geoengineering. Not to say that we don't have a problem otherwise. Not to say that human activity isn't a form of geoengineering, as I said. But geoengineering is like trying to put a fire out with a bucket of gas. It simply can't work. Jet stream configurations, this is important to look at. You see these radical swings, these radical dips. It appears to be what they're doing to cool the East Coast. They create high pressure zones like the one that's over us now, pumps the storms far north. They can cool that air as it goes through Alaska and Canada, pump it down to the eastern U.S. and cool off half the country while the other half literally fries and dries. It's exactly the configuration we're going through right now. Methane leaking from the seafloor. This is an illustration that shows how it covers the planet. You have hydrates that leak through the seafloor up to the surface. They acidify the ocean on their way up, and then they go into the atmosphere where they start to cover the planet. This is methane release from, this is what the scientists on the front line that are willing to speak honestly. Biggest story of 2013, methane release. To give you an idea why methane is so important, there's enough methane in the reservoir that you see here in the Arctic, the Laptev Sea. There's enough methane there to extinguish life on Earth many times over. Many. If this methane gets into the atmosphere, it's game over. It's that simple. It's game over. It's starting to happen now. If geoengineering doesn't stop and the planet's not allowed to respond, I think we have no chance. Global warming and the Gulf Stream. Our atmospheric pollution roadway to subsea Arctic methane-induced climate hell. Again, more stories that are not being covered by media. This is an issue that will change our collective reality quite quickly. You'll hear about this soon enough. This is methane also. You see the graph go straight up. No secret that it's increasing rapidly. CH4 is methane. This is an important globe, paints a good picture. 2013, January 1st to 11th, on your left. 2014, on the right. You see much, much more color on the 2014 map. Methane's releasing very rapidly. To give you an idea, for about the last million years, methane was never over 700 parts per billion. About 9 months ago, it went up to 1,800. Now we're seeing spikes up to 2,350, 2,500 parts per billion. Radical escalation. I mean, unlike anything that's happened in far more than the last million years. So this is a very pertinent issue. Helping the geoengineers to sell geoengineering. When we don't understand what's happening with the climate and we go along with some headlines and we take headlines as a source of information, right now, that's what the geoengineers appear to want. Why is the U.S. government trying to control the contents of scientific journals? They want to control scientific journals because that's how they control the scientific community. That's how they create the illusion of agencies like the EPA and other such agencies that we're led to believe are there for our own protection. We're led to believe to tell us if something's wrong. Couldn't be further from it. Absolutely couldn't be further. So as they control universities, which they do now quite well, they control system. And that's why we can have things like this happening without any media acknowledgement, any media acknowledgement. HARP again. HARP, I want to go into what HARP does in a few other scenarios. So it's another picture of HARP. It's a very ominous and very, very dangerous installation. It's literally dripping holes in the atmosphere. Here you have a HARP signal. That's why I showed that image again. Now, that big, bright area over the eastern U.S., guess what that is? Arctic vortex. The big headlines that we're all forced to believe that if you walked out the door, you would immediately turn into a popsicle. So, yes, there was cold temperatures, very cold.